Hey, this is Rick with Social Good Software. In this short demo, I'm going to be sharing with you how you can create a data bridge and then sync that data bridge over into Google Sheets. So we're going to be starting here from scratch. So if you've never built a data bridge, you don't know how the data bridge app works, or you just have some thoughts about some of the projects that you have in mind and you want to see if this data bridge tool can help you, we're going to be walking through the process of creating a data bridge from scratch today. So let's go ahead and jump right into things. I'm going to go here and share with you a little bit more background on how the data bridge application works. The main idea behind the data bridge application is that it allows you to be able to connect Altru with your favorite applications. In this example, we're going to be connecting with Google Sheets, but this can also be done with Excel. You can do this with Constant Contact or MailChimp. And then the main idea behind this is so you're able to extract insights from your data and be able to move data around between applications without too much effort. And we sync this data in real time, so as the data changes within Altru, these data bridges are updated. Now, some of the other applications that they connect with sometimes are not in real time, so they might have to be fetched manually, such as MailChimp or Constant Contact, where they run once an hour or once a day, depending on how you configure them. But today, we're just going to be looking at Google Sheets, and we're going to be connecting the data bridge from some data from Altru and then moving that data over into Google Sheets. Alright, so let me give you a quick breakdown here of how the data bridge works. Here are the steps that we need to follow so we can automate some report. And typically what I recommend here is to start with your questions. So this is before we look at any technology, before we look at Altru, data bridge, or Google Sheets. Before we look at anything, just start with your questions. And what I typically recommend is that you grab just a pen and paper, or maybe open up a Word doc and just write down the questions you want to have answered. This is really important because this way you can always go back to the question if you ever get stuck. So if we don't have a question that we want to answer and we're just working off of vague ideas, it's very hard to create any reports or be able to actually measure any of the outcomes that you have in place. So always start with your question, whatever that question might be. And if the question is too complex, just break it down into a smaller question that can answer a bigger question. So maybe you end up creating 5 data bridges that answer 5 different questions, but that gives you the answer to the bigger question. So always start with your questions first and then work your way up that way. Step 2 is once you have created your question is to write a query with Altru. So this is typically when you go inside the query builder inside of Altru and go in there and construct the query itself. We will not be creating a query here. The queries can be pretty much anything derived from your question. So we can't really record us creating a query because the queries can be any number of queries, just like questions. It could be any number of questions. And then step 3 is actually creating your data bridge, which is pretty straightforward to do. And step 4 is creating a widget type, which I'll share with you how to do that today. And then finally, step 5 will be configuring your widget. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look here on step number 1. So like I was mentioning before, step 1 is just to take a few minutes and define the questions you want to have answered. Think about your data you will need and how you will need that data to be presented. Work through any joins or exclusions on paper before writing any queries. So again, kind of reiterating the steps that I just mentioned a little bit before, is you want to take that time to really think through the questions you want to have answered. Think about what data you will need and how you want that data to be presented. Do you want it in a pie chart? Do you want it in a graph chart? Do you want it represented in time? Do you just want to see a running total? And then finally, work through any joins or exclusions on paper before writing queries. So this is the place that most people get stuck on, is you don't take a few minutes to write down the people you want to exclude or the people you want to include. So you want to make sure that you write down the people that you want to exclude and you want to include on paper before you head over into Altru, because if you don't, you might get stuck on the query side of things and it might become a really confusing, and you might not be able to construct the query you want because you don't know who you're excluding and including. So just take a few minutes to look at inclusions and joins on paper before you write them with Altru. All right, and then finally, step number 2 is write your queries with Altru. Like I mentioned before, we're not going to go in Altru today and write the query itself because this query can just be pretty much anything. But the main idea here is to convert your ideas from paper to a query with Altru. It's okay if you need to create multiple queries, you can always separate them out. So don't think like you need to go ahead and grab every single thing in your query. If you need to separate out, it's not a big deal. And also be a little bit patient as you find the fields you're looking for. These can be a little bit tricky to find within Altru. So make sure you just take a couple seconds and really work through that process. And what I typically recommend is to start with one row and make sure it matches what you expect in the output. So one of the big challenges that we see with people that have not written queries before or have trouble writing queries is you get all this data and you get overwhelmed. So what we recommend is just to constrain it to one item until you're happy with that one item and then open it up to more rows. And you can do this with an ID, with the system record ID, with an email, with the lookup ID. Any of those things will work. But just start with one row, find all the fields, all the columns, all the exclusions that you have, and then open it up to more rows. And then finally, test and test and test some more. You should go through a couple of tests before you're happy with the output from these queries. All right, so once you have created your query, you're pretty much ready to move on here to the next step, which is create your data bridge. So the data bridge lets you go ahead and create as many data bridges as you need. Once you have your data bridge defined, you can add your queries from Altru. You can preview your data and make sure it looks correct. Your data bridge will be updated in real time. So that's step number 3. And then finally, step number 4, once you have your bridge created, you need to create a widget type, and you can choose the widget type you'll need to display your data. You can have more than one widget type, such as Google Sheets, Excel, MailChimp, Constant Contact, HubSpot, Zapier, graphing, charts, numbers, that type of thing. So you're able to go in there and really make those changes. And then finally, step number 5 is to configure your widget. So each widget type comes with its own separate settings. So you want to take a few minutes to make sure that the widget type is configured correctly for the output you want to display. Some widget types can be made public within the widget type options. Other widget types are private by default for security reasons. Okay, so that's pretty much how it works. So let's go ahead and walk through a demo. And here's kind of how all the steps are outlined. We have our step number 1, start with your questions. And the question I have is, how many tickets have we sold today? Step number 2 is write down your queries with Altru. And I provide you a little query example here. Let's see if we can open this up. This is just a PDF from our sales order template for emails. But this just pretty much shows you individuals, tickets, primary email address, the transaction days to date. And these are not that relevant. And then here's the fields you want to output. Again, depending on your questions you have, for us, all we want to know is the total cost of the order. So this is how possibly your query could look like. So let's go back down here. So now that we have created a query, again, I'm not going to go through the process of creating the query. I'll leave that up to you. We're going to go ahead and create a data bridge. All right, so we're going to go ahead and log into our account here, and we're going to head over into the data bridge application. Here, we're going to go ahead and click on this create data bridge button. We're going to call this one tickets sold today. So tickets sold today. We're going to add our OData link. Again, I went ahead and already prepared a OData link, so we don't need to create that from scratch. For you just need to work on the query and you'll be able to have an OData link as well. And all this OData link is doing is just pulling in all of the tickets that have been sold for a specific date. So we're going to click on next here. And then we're going to click next one more time. And then we're going to get a series of questions here. The first one here being a merging key. This is if you want to merge any of the columns. So if you have any multiple rows that are sharing the same data, you're able to merge them together. In our case, we don't. So we're going to say not available, not merging anything here. And then if you want to hide any columns, we give you the option to hide any of the columns from the output. So in our case, we're just going to hide this query CID. We don't need that. And then we're going to go ahead and click on create data bridge. And this is going to go ahead and create our data bridge for us. So I'm going to go ahead and click over into tickets sold today. And then we're going to head over into preview. And then you will see here's a preview of our data. You can see here the transaction date. This comes over as a timestamp. The sales method, how it was sold, and then the lookup ID, and then the total amount for that order. So this gives us kind of a running total of everything that's happened for this specific query. So we got our first step done, which is our question. Step 2, we wrote a query. Step 3, we created a data bridge. And now we're off to step 4, which is create your widget type. So we're going to go over to widgets. And then now we're going to create a widget, and we're going to call this one Google Sheets. And then we're going to select Google Sheets here. That's the widget type we're going to be creating. And we're going to say create widget type. And this goes ahead and creates the widget type for us. And then if we click over into it, you will go over into the preview tab, and you will see here, here's all of the raw data for this widget type. And this is pretty much ready to be sent over to Google Sheets at this point. If we head over to the Share Settings tab, here's how you're able to share it with Google Sheets. So you copy this link and paste it into Google Sheets, and you're able to do that. You're also able to direct link to it by just simply giving this link to somebody. So this is if you want to go ahead and send this off to a developer for them to use this data in a different way, you can do that as well. And if you go to the Settings tab, you will see that we generate a username and we generate a password to protect the data. And then you can see here, here's the username and password, and the data is coming through in a JSON format, so a developer can take this and use it in a different application, feed another widget, whatever it might be, they can use that. Most cases you won't be using this option here. You're going to be using this option here for Google Sheets. This username and password will be deleted after this video, so this credentials will be invalid. So don't worry so much about me actually sharing this information. I will delete this widget type, and you can just do that by clicking delete widget, and this will generate a new username and password once you recreate it. I can show you really quick. So if you do delete widget, the widget is now gone. You can go ahead and recreate it again. So we're going to say Google Sheets there, create that widget, and the widget is recreated again. And again, we have a new username and password there. Okay, so now that we have created our widget type, the next step here is to configure the widget, and we're going to be moving the data into Google Sheets. So I have this handy Google Sheet that you can use. You can copy the Google Sheet from this example to your Google Drive. Adjust the spreadsheet to download your data with your username and password. You can manually trigger the data download, which I'll show you here in a second. Note, keep in mind that Google Sheet will grow and shrink based on the data you set up, so make sure that you do your calculations on a column. Okay, so let's go ahead and check this Google Sheet out. Here's our Google Sheet, and what we're going to do here is going to go File, Make a Copy, and then we're going to click OK. And this is going to go ahead and make a copy of that Google Sheet for us to be able to use for our project. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to say my project, so I know what I'm working on here. And then the first one here is our URL. So we're going to go back into our widget. We're going to go to share. We're going to copy this link, go back into our Google Sheet. We're going to paste in our link right in there, just like that. Now we need a username, so we're going to go into settings, grab our username, and then we're going to put that in there. And then we're going to grab our password. Here's our password, and we're going to put that in there. Okay, so once you have done this, all you have to do is click on this little drop down and click download data. And then this says you have requested new data. You can now close this dialog. So I'm going to click OK. And this is going to go and download all the data for us. And as you can see here, here's all the data that we had just queried. So if you come back over here, let's go back and just take a sold today, preview. Here's all of our data. And now we can see it in Google Sheets. So at this point, we have downloaded our data. Our data is now available in Google Sheets. And at this point, we can run a report, we can create graphs, we can do sums, we can combine this data with other data. But pretty much that's the gist of connecting Google Sheets with Altru. This data will be updated automatically when the Google Sheet is open for the first time. If you ever want to download data again, you can just simply click on this little download and click on download data. And this will go ahead and schedule the data download for you. And then we'll pull in some of that data here for you once again. So that's pretty much all there is to setting up Google Sheets with Altru and connecting those both applications to be able to sync and pull that data accordingly. So that's going to go and do it here for me. If you have any questions about this process, if you have any suggestions how we can improve it, make it better, maybe you want to see more templates, please let us know. Reach out to us. We're always happy to help if you have any questions or suggestions on how to improve this and make it any better. Once again, my name is Rick, and I really appreciate the time, and I look forward to talking to you soon.